When World War II broke out, Sweden chose to stay out, but not to stand still. With no allies, no military aid, and a strict policy for neutrality, the country needed a tank of its own, designed and built to deter anyone who dared cross its borders. The result? STRV M42, Sweden's first mass-produced wartime tank. It was perfect. The design came with its own set of challenges, especially a notoriously complex transmission. But through these trials, and a service life that spanned more than 4 decades, the STRV M42 laid the foundation for Sweden's modern armored doctrine. From hypothetical battlefields to coastal bunkers, this is the story of a tank born from self-reliance and sustained by sheer practicality. When World War II erupted, Sweden's armed forces had little real deterrent power, just 13 light tanks in service. As the threat of conflict loomed closer to its borders, the Swedish army urgently sought a more capable medium tank to serve as the backbone of its first armed regiments. The opportunity came from the Lago, an export tank design originally developed by Landsverk, but rejected by Hungary. Drawing on German engineering principles, particularly the use of torsion bar suspension and welded hull, Sweden adapted the Lago into the STRV M42, upgrading it with a 75mm Bofors gun and thicker armor. Still, the design had to conform to strict national limits on size and weight, resulting in a long, narrow hull and a stressed drivetrain. Despite technical issues, especially with the electromagnetic gearbox in some variants, the STRV M42 became Sweden's first mass-produced medium tank. It represented a careful balance between technological ambition and practical constraints, laying the foundation for the country's independent armed development in the decades to come. The Stridsvagn M42 was Sweden's first domestically developed and mass-produced medium tank. Born from a context full of internal constraints, weighing approximately 22.5 tons and measuring over 6 meters in length, the STRV M42 adhered strictly to national limits on vehicle dimensions and weight, a factor that influenced nearly every aspect of its design. With a narrow width of just 2.35 meters, it was built to safely traverse civilian roads and railway bridges of the era. The 4-man crew operated in a cramped fighting compartment, a direct result of the tank's narrow hull and low profile. Its primary armament was the Bofors 75mm cannon M41 L31, a short-barreled gun comparable to the early war American 75mm M3 or the German KWK-37. It could fire a range of ammunition, including standard armor-piercing and high-explosive anti-tank APHE shells, with an average penetration of 60 to 63 millimeters at 500 meters. This was sufficient against early war light and medium armed vehicles, but proven less effective against the sloped armor of the T-34 or the later Panzer IV variants. What set the STRV M42 apart was its excellent capability for defensive fire. With an impressive gun depression angle of -15 degrees, combined with its compact size and low silhouette, the tank excelled in using natural terrain for concealment. It could effectively employ the hull-down tactic, hiding the entire hull while exposing only the turret during combat, allowing it to maintain firepower while minimizing exposure to enemy fire. The armor layout of the STRV M42 reflected Sweden's attempt to balance weight with battlefield survivability. The front armor of both the hull and turret was 55 millimeters thick, sufficient to withstand light weapons and small caliber guns. However, side armor ranged from only 25 to 30 millimeters. Rear armor was about 20 millimeters and the roof plates were a thin 9 to 10 millimeters. These vulnerabilities left the tank exposed to heavy machine guns, close-range artillery, or air attacks, limiting its effectiveness in offensive mechanized operations. The EH variant was powered by a Volvo A8B engine delivering 410 horsepower, giving it a power-to-weight ratio of around 18.2 horsepower per ton, quite high for a medium tank of its time. It could reach a top speed of 42 to 45 kilometers an hour on good roads, but in practice, its mobility was hampered by its low and narrow chassis, making it difficult to turn or navigate through terrain. Reverse speed was limited to just 6 kilometers per hour, reducing its ability to quickly withdraw after firing. One key issue was the lack of a standardized transmission system. Early models were fitted with imported German ZF electromagnetic gearboxes, an option that proved notoriously unreliable. Later variants, such as the TH and TV, switched to domestic hydraulic and mechanical transmissions, which significantly improved performance. Still, the narrow hull, concentrated weight, and subatomical layout continued to strain the drivetrain and overall mechanical reliability. Overall, the STRV M42 was a wartime engineering achievement that showcased Sweden's growing defense industry, a tank built more for adaptability than revolution. Though it fell short of Soviet or German counterparts in firepower and protection, it fulfilled its purpose as a capable defensive deterrent, especially suited to Sweden's rugged terrain. More importantly, its chassis proved robust and flexible enough to serve as the foundation for the later STRV-74 upgrade, a testament to Swedish pragmatism and long-term vision in tank design. After a difficult early service period during World War II, the STRV M42 remained in the Swedish Army as a stopgap solution, bridging the long post-war peace and Sweden's slow path toward defense modernization. The country's neutral stance significantly extended the tank's service life, allowing it to remain in use for 2 decades, even as many of its contemporaries were retired. Rather than being replaced immediately after the war, the M42 was retained for training and reserve duties, helping to ensure Sweden's armed forces could be mobilized in the event of conflict. Several vehicles were used in trials with improved gearboxes, engines, and suspension systems, laying the groundwork for future upgrades. The continued use of the TV and TH variants, which had addressed some of the earlier drivetrain issues, underscored the core value of the original chassis despite its limitations. From the late 1940s through the early 1950s, as Sweden was not yet ready or financially able to import a new generation of tanks, the STRV M42 remained the backbone of the country's armed units. It was regularly employed in large-scale exercises, combined arms training, and terrain-based tactical trials, particularly in hilly or wooded regions, where its excellent gun depression continued to offer a clear advantage. However, a major turning point in the life of the STRV M42 came in the late 1950s, when the Swedish military launched an extensive upgrade program that transformed aging chassis into more modern combat vehicles. This strategic decision was not only cost-effective, but also crucial for maintaining Sweden's armed deterrence during the escalating tension of the Cold War. The result was the creation of the STRV-74, along with support variants like the IKV-73, both clear examples of Sweden's pragmatic and budget-conscious defense policy. Organizationally, the STRV M42 also laid the foundation for crew training and armed operations in Sweden for years to come. From the 4-man crew layout to the emphasis on hull-down tactics, well suited to the country's terrain, the tank shaped operational doctrine and tactical thinking. The continuity in vehicle structure and control systems between the M42 and the later STRV-74 significantly reduced retraining costs and helped ensure a smooth transition into Sweden's post-war armed doctrine. By the time the last chassis were either converted or retired from service, the STRV M42 was no longer a frontline combat vehicle. Yet, it had fulfilled its historical role, from being a wartime symbol of self-reliance to serving as a foundation for post-war upgrades, and ultimately becoming a valuable resource that extended its military utility for decades.